most trusted and connected man in Utah.
Senator Bennett, it's great to have you back.
Thank you.
Doug Wright.
A debate on Doug Wright, or at least a joint appearance on Doug Wright, is something that the candidates can't refuse.
The Doug Wright Show on KSL News Radio 102.7 FM and 1160 AM.
So good to have you along, and I've been looking forward to this hour here at KSL News Radio. And I've talked about this, I don't know how often, when we have been electing the mayor of Salt Lake County, that only the governor and statewide elected officials and our 2 U.S. senators represent more people than does the mayor of Salt Lake County. And that same thing could be said of those who are elected at the council level at large. And we have 2 individuals who are running for that seat, and we have Jenny Wilson, former at-large member of the county council, candidate for mayor back of Salt Lake City in 2007. I remember Jenny in many different capacities, but especially as chief of staff to U.S. Representative Bill Orton. And Jenny, welcome. It's good to have you here today.
Thank you, Doug. Great to be here.
Also, we have Micah Bruner, who is joining us today, an attorney who operates a law practice in Sandy, Utah, graduate of the BYU Law School, undergraduate studies at the University of Utah, clerked for a judge in the Alaska Supreme Court. And Micah, I appreciate you joining us today as well.
Thank you, Doug. Thanks for having me.
We did the very dramatic coin toss, which we are documenting. We'll put the picture of the tail of the quarter showing up on our Facebook page a moment ago. And Micah, you had called heads. So the way this will work is Jenny will get the first part of the opening statement. Because of winning the coin toss, she will also get the last word on the program as we have our concluding comments. We'll have 1 minute to answer questions with a 30-second rebuttal, and that will bounce back and forth. And again, we encourage those who do have questions for our county council at-large candidates. There's still time for you to send them via Facebook. We've had some really good questions that have come in via text and a few that have come in on Facebook, and I have a list of my own. Many times we'll end up kind of creating a hybrid question out of several. They're kind of in the same vein with just little different twists. So having set the stage, let's start the debate. And Jenny, since you won the coin toss, we'll have you with your opening statement, and we'll give you 2 minutes.
That sounds great. Thank you, Doug. And thank you, Micah. It's great to be here. The first thing I want to comment on is when I was driving in, Doug, I was listening to your discussion with the viewers about the lack of engagement in today's debate. And many of you are out listening now, so I appreciate that. And I think one of the issues is county government can feel a little bit overwhelming. And there can be some confusion sometimes between city, state, local, and the services the county provides versus those entities. So one thing I'd like to do throughout the course of the hour that we have together is kind of talk a little about the role of county government. I served there for 6 years. I'd like to go back. I served in an at-large position previously, which is county-wide. It's 1.2 million people. It's 17 or 16 cities, rather, and an unincorporated area. The budget is almost $1 billion with a B. The 9 members of the county council set that budget. And so it's a very important government. And we have a mayor, Mayor Ben McAdams, who in many other communities might be called a county executive. So a local person might have a local mayor, a Ralph Becker if you live in the city, or a Joanne Sagini if you live in Midvale. But you also have Ben McAdams as your elected. So the county matters. Mental health and aging, police and fire, tourism, recreation. The Salt Palace is under county management. The arts facilities in downtown. These are all areas that matter to the people. Recreation is key. How do we, as county government, deliver services in an efficient, effective manner, and what are the elements that go into that? Those are things I've worked on. I was perceived as a very bipartisan-oriented person when I was on the county council. I have many Republican mayors endorsing me, including Democrats. I believe in reaching across the aisle to find solutions in these very important areas.
Jenny, thank you for your opening statement. And Micah Bruner, let's hear from you.
Thank you, Doug and Jenny, and to everybody who has made this debate possible. And I appreciate Jenny's comments about government. I think the role of government overall is key for many people, in not only in this race but this election cycle. George Washington is quoted as saying that government is not reason, it is not eloquent, it is force. Like fire, it is a dangerous servant and a fearful master. And I like that comparison of government with fire because we can all relate to it. For instance, when it comes to a campfire, none of us would want one that is so small it couldn't keep us warm or cook our food. Naturally, we would all want it large enough to actually serve our needs. But just as importantly, none of us would want it to be so large that we would have to spend all of our time and energy serving its needs, increasingly feeding it more and more until we had exhausted both ourselves and our fuel source. Likewise, we wouldn't want to build a fire so large that it had the potential of growing out of control and ultimately posing a threat to our well-being. So just as respecting the risks involved and seeking the right balance are important in determining the proper size of a campfire, they are similarly important in determining the proper size of government. We don't want the minimum or no government. We don't want the maximum or total government. What we want is the optimum. But what is that? Well, some believe society is best served by the government playing an increasingly larger role in our lives. But I believe it is imperative to vigilantly check the growth of government in order to maintain maximum freedom consistent with order. Career politicians too often grow out of touch with the values of middle-class America. Too often they spend taxpayer dollars irresponsibly. And too often they are willing to meddle in even the most intimate details of our lives. Thus it is imperative to keep a tight rein on the human tendency to consolidate and abuse power. Because I believe this, I have chosen to run on the platform of seeking a government that is more representative of your values, more responsible with your money, and more restrained from meddling in your business. If you share in my sense of balance to government, I hope you'll support me in this effort.
To both of you, thank you for your opening comments. Let's start by asking this question, and this has come in various forms. This is a hybrid question of several that have come in from Facebook, and also some thoughts of mine, and then also some that our texters sent in as well. Several of our texters, several of our Facebook individuals, and I, having been born in Salt Lake County, a lifelong resident, have been concerned about some of the challenges we face. Looking at the rapid population growth, I believe Jenny mentioned, I said over 1 million, 1.2 million population here in Salt Lake County. Several individuals have talked about what are some of those challenges that come with that growth. When it comes to water, when it comes to utilities and just space itself. And this was an interesting part that one individual asked, should there be some kind of limitations and or guidelines on how the growth occurs above and beyond just garden variety zoning, things of that nature? Something, I got the impression from that texter, something rather significant to assure that we have a continued quality of life due to and surrounding the great growth that we are having in Salt Lake County. And let's start with Micah on this one with your 1 minute.
Certainly we face some major issues, and as our population grows, it's important that we plan ahead and that we take steps necessary in order to make sure that this growth doesn't become overwhelming, that we are planning wisely. As far as any type of draconian effort to limit how many people can move into the valley, I don't think that that would be the proper role of government. But what we can do is, as you mentioned, Doug, through zoning and planning ahead, some master plans, ensuring that we are maintaining our environmental quality and open space, preserving our watershed, and then planning ahead for economic and commercial zones, and most importantly, I think, is transportation corridors to ensure that we don't have increasing congestion as more and more people come. We can make this growth something that can be beneficial to us, and we shouldn't have to fear it, but rather something that we can use to our benefit.
Micah, thank you. And Jenny, your 60 seconds.
Well, I recall throughout my career, growth has always been an issue, and it will continue to be an issue. And you see an aging population growing, and yes, our population is growing at a rate that can be uncertain and frightening to us. I remember as a child growing up in Salt Lake City, spending time in the community, and I don't want to say it was a sleepy little town, but it was a town where it felt like a town or a small city. We are not that anymore, and things are changing. And I look at the great quality of life I've enjoyed here. Doug, I spent years in D.C. I wanted to come back. I chose to come back. I was in Boston after I received my graduate degree, and I had a couple of opportunities, and I thought, it's time to come home. I would not even think of leaving. This is the place I want to raise my 2 children. My husband and I love the amenities here. Growth is critical. We have to, the county, reach out and coordinate better and have 50-year plans, not just 10-year plans.
Micah, if you choose, you've got 30 seconds.
I just want to reiterate that, as with Jenny, I grew up here in Salt Lake County. In fact, I went to West High, just down the street here, and grew up in this neighborhood, and love the quality of life that we enjoy here in Salt Lake County. After I finished my term as a clerk in Alaska, we chose to come back and raise our 3 children here. And that quality of life that we seek here needs to be preserved through proper planning. But we also need to recognize that it's a great place to live, and a lot of people are going to want to come here. So let's find ways to accommodate them and preserve our quality of life.
We will come back and continue our debate here at KSL News Radio. Our thanks to Jenny Wilson joining us, Micah Bruner also with us here in our KSL studios for the remainder of the hour, and we'll ask questions on your behalf. So good to have you along on today's Doug Wright Show at KSL News Radio. County Council at Large, up for grabs here. Micah Bruner joining us in studio along with Jenny Wilson. Here's another question for both of you that I've received in various fashion. People very concerned about the quality of life, especially since people along the Wasatch Front in general and people from around the world enjoy our canyons with us. I know when I was a kid, I used to look at Mill Creek Canyon as my backyard, almost like a backyard park. More and more, our citizenry along the Wasatch Front becoming concerned about the canyons, the mountain accord that is being discussed, the growth in the canyons, transportation in the canyons. Perhaps we could focus directly on that for this question. What would you specifically be focused on as a county council person when it comes to protecting the canyon in general, the watershed in general, but the recreation possibilities as well? And Jenny, let's start with you on this one.
Well, I'm a big fan of the Mountain Accord process, which is bringing together stakeholders, governments, and citizens to discuss how we preserve the canyons. We will not achieve anything without dialogue, and that is a good framework for dialogue. If I am able to enter the room and be a participant in this, and I'll make that request the day after the election, my bias will be preservation. I think the resorts, they're changing, but they're doing well. We continue to promote tourism. We continue to find ways to bring more people in. We will do well in that sector. Preservation is my bias. We have got to make sure that we have the beauty, the management, so we don't overrun those trails. We need more funding for trails, which is something that I hope to work on as well. How do we assure that we get traffic managed better? There are all sorts of ideas, and I want to be a part of that dialogue.
Micah, your thoughts on the canyons?
I'll echo what Jenny had to say about the Mountain Accord. That's a fantastic collaboration of those who have interests in our canyons and ski resorts and preservationists and those looking out for our environmental quality. And I, too, would want to make sure that I was a party to that as your county council representative. I grew up here in the city. My dad tells great stories about City Creek Canyon being his backyard. I love taking my kids up to the canyons and being able to picnic and escape from the heat in the summertime and to enjoy just getting a little perspective, hiking the mountains that we have. What we want to avoid is anything that's going to threaten that, anything that's going to keep us from being able to use our canyons. We want to avoid abusing our canyons and ensuring that there's accessibility for all, to ensure that we can continue to enjoy the canyons and they represent the crown jewels of Salt Lake County, so we want to make sure that we preserve them.
Before we take a break at the bottom of the hour, we have time for another question. And I can remember when this was first proposed, and it's up for renewal right now, but the ZAP tax, Zoo Arts and Parks tax. Your thoughts on that in general? What kind of an asset that has been over the last while here in Salt Lake County, and what you see as its future, and do you support the ZAP tax? And Jenny, I didn't give you 30 seconds. I'm sorry. I needed to throw that back to you if you have other thoughts on the canyon.
I think we covered it,
okay.
So no problem, Doug.
Thank you. All right, so this time we'll go with Micah first, and the ZAP tax.
The ZAP tax is I think just an incredible method of allowing for the citizens of and the residents of Salt Lake County to determine how they want to spend or to raise their own taxes, if they're willing to raise their own taxes for solid quality of life issues. So in general, I support the fact that it's a citizen-based tax increase. I think we could do a better job in ensuring transparency as to where those monies are received and go. I had an individual say that it would be more aptly named the APZ tax because the zoo gets the smallest portion, and a lot of it goes to arts and then to the parks. But we also fund recreation centers. I think we can do a better job of ensuring that there's money that goes to their ongoing maintenance as opposed to just capital facilities. So I think it's a great asset overall, but I think we can manage it better with transparency and knowing where the money is going and being able to afford the facilities that we build with it.
Jenny, your thoughts on the ZAP tax?
Well, I'm pretty sure that when you look at the election returns, the ZAP tax will pass with a greater percentage than any of the rest of us. People agree this is a good tax. They want recreation in their communities. It's been vital to supporting arts in our communities, which create a good platform for economic development, for tourism, for culture, for all the things we cherish in this community. You know, I see other communities as I travel, and I don't think there's one as well-rounded, and I think this is one of the things that we do very, very well, and I'm a big supporter. I believe it's administered well, and I will be voting in favor of the tax and urge you to do so as well.
Micah, any response to that?
I agree that, well, as I said, it's a fantastic tax, and I love that it's citizen-based, and I agree with Jenny, that's going to be the overwhelming winner come November 5th. I think that we can do things to improve it.
We will take a break here at the bottom of the hour for our news, and we'll come back. We've got a lot of questions that have been posed by our KSL listeners via text, via Facebook for our candidates. We have Jenny Wilson, who is here in studio, Micah Bruner, who is also here, both wanting to serve on the county commission in the at-large seat. And again, there are 1,200,000 people now. Isn't that hard to believe? I remember when Utah hit 1 million, and that's certainly in my lifetime. And nobody will represent more people in the state of Utah, save only the statewide elected officials. That includes the governor, the Attorney General, and others at the state level, and then our U.S. senators. Nobody will represent more people than these county council at-large individuals. So let's take a break. We'll come right back with more of today's Doug Wright Show and our debate here at KSL.
The most trusted and connected man in Utah.
UDOT Deputy Director Shane Marshall with us.
No problem, Doug.
Doug Wright.
In Utah, we place a high value on being self-sufficient, and we're very fortunate to have a governor and a state legislature that recognizes the importance of transportation to the state.
The Doug Wright Show on KSL News Radio 102.7 FM and 1160 AM.
County Council at Large. I really appreciate Micah Bruner joining us here in studio. Jenny Wilson also here in studio for those who may have just tuned in. Jenny served as a former at-large member, candidate for mayor in Salt Lake City, 2007, chief of staff to Representative Bill Orton, and for Micah Bruner, an attorney with his own practice in Sandy, law school at BYU after the undergraduate degree in studies at the University of Utah, clerked for a judge on the Alaska Superior Court, both of lifelong residents. Is that a fair statement on both of you? Here in Salt Lake County. And let's move on to the next question that we have, and let's start with Jenny on this one. This is an issue of the future of some of the major facilities here in Salt Lake County, and I'm going to expand the time on this a little bit, but I think for time's sake, we better meld these together. The future of the Utah State Prison, which currently is in Salt Lake County, and as I understand it, and others understand it, that of the sites that are being considered, some are still in Salt Lake County. So the future of the Utah State Prison. Also, the future of the State Fairgrounds, which, of course, currently and has been since the beginning in Salt Lake County. What should the future of the fairgrounds be? And what about a minor league soccer stadium at the fairgrounds? Now, we've combined several significant things there, but I've also expanded the time to 2 minutes for each of you on this. So, Jenny, let's start with you.
Well, first of all, in the prison, we all know it's not adequate. The question is, what is the right method? What is the right time? I have a deep concern about not so much the bricks and mortar, but what happens within a jail and how we, as elected officials, our corrections officials, our sheriffs, et cetera, make good choices for the prison population. But I think it will be the right time. We have to find the right location. I advocate keeping it in Salt Lake County. We have the population base there. We have certainly a population base in the neighboring counties, but I think the location there will be to our benefit. Fairgrounds, an older facility, but one that is vital. Bringing the fair up here every year is something that I think families enjoy and is important to our broader industries and agricultural industry, and really a great thing to demonstrates a lot of what Utah is all about. So that location, I think we need to continue to look at options, but bringing in minor league soccer, I think it becomes a question of what is the public benefit and how do we fund it? And I'm a big believer that where we can come up with reasonably priced facilities that will benefit our economy and benefit our communities, we will come out ahead by finding creative ways to invest in them. But we have to have some limits. I was slow to support the soccer stadium going into Sandy back in the day, because in the end I think we had a better deal than we initially started with, and I reluctantly supported it, and it's been a good amenity. But we have to ask the hard questions. We have to do things right when we enter into these agreements.
All right, your 2 minutes, Micah.
Well, certainly the state prison, I think, presents an opportunity for some great growth, and you know, we look at the viability of the current facility, and if it's a question of investing heavily in what we have now versus moving it, I think that it's probably a good opportunity to look at moving the prison and being able to use that land for open space and for some perhaps some new tech companies moving in to the county. As to where it goes, honestly, I don't know that we have the room here in Salt Lake County, but obviously we want to keep it close by, because this is where the population base is for all of Utah, and we want to be able to ensure that we have the accessibility for those who have, unfortunately, friends and relatives in the prison. As far as the state fairgrounds, again, I grew up here in Salt Lake City, here on the west side. I have a lot of friends who live in the Fair Park area. And I think it's a fantastic facility that obviously needs some investment, but I think that it's a great location, especially with the new tracks line that goes down North Temple right near there. So I would support keeping it there. I'm never a big fan of creating, I guess, tax incentives for sports facilities being built. I think that there's a balance that may be struck, but I think it's difficult to ask people to pay money for somebody to come in and build something that they're going to be making money off of. But if we can make it make sense and it doesn't create congestion or cause problems for those who live in that neighborhood, then I think it's a potential opportunity to get some good investment money into what is a wonderful facility here on the west side of Salt Lake.
A quick follow-up on that, and I'll give Jenny her 30-second rebuttal here in a moment, but Deloy Hansen seems to be making an offer of basically ponying up the money himself. Does that make a difference? And I don't think we haven't seen the details on that. We haven't seen what the final agreement would be. But just a quick response on that as well. If that ends up being more privately funded in order, and I would assume the benefit for Mr. Hansen would be to enhance his team, enhance the sport of soccer. Does that make a difference? And Jenny, let's start with you.
I think community-based solutions often involve citizen investment, and I'm a big fan of finding methods and ways where government can work with the private sector and with individuals to come up with good solutions. So I'd have to see more on the details without committing myself, but I think generally those ideas where we can bring in a shared responsibility are a good thing. That's how we brought the Jazz here. That's how we built the Delta Center. We had to have a visionary leader, and I appreciate the work of Deloy Hansen in moving forward and keeping the team here.
Micah, your thoughts on that?
Well, obviously, the devil is always in the details, and I think that if Deloy Hansen is going to pony up the entire investment in order to build that stadium, then it's certainly a much more viable option. I think it's important that we ensure that there's a dialogue with those who live in the neighborhood to ensure that this is something that they want, so that there is that investment, that community investment. They feel that they are made a part of the process in bringing this facility in. But definitely, it makes a big difference if we're not ponying up public money for this enterprise.
Jenny, let's give you your 30 seconds if you'd care to use it here.
I think we've covered it just fine.
All right. That's a good point to take a brief break. We've got much more coming up when we return. Plus, we'll have time for a closing comment from both of our candidates for County Council at Large, all here at KSL News Radio.
Doug Wright, interrupting everything to cover breaking news. You'll hear it first on KSL News Radio.
We've talked a little bit about the ZAP tax. It was quite a while ago that the people along the Wasatch Front in phases decided that they would tax themselves for mass transit. And since we now have the track system, the front runner system, we even have a streetcar system, interesting developments in mass transit. There are those now who are proposing that we perhaps look at taxing ourselves again, increasing a tax so we can be even more aggressive in building mass transit. And a group most recently has been working with UTA and challenging them to come up with ways that we can expand the service of tracks in particular to go later in the evening and on the weekend. More and more I am hearing from people that look into this that would require an additional tax for mass transit here along the Wasatch Front. And I'd like to get your thoughts, first of all, on mass transit in general, and should we look at increasing the mass transit tax along the Wasatch Front in general to accommodate some of the expansion. And this time we start with Micah.
Well, I think certainly mass transit is something that I think is necessary here along the Wasatch Front. But before we look at increasing taxes, I think the audit conducted by the legislature over the summer points out that there are some significant issues with how UTA is run as a whole. Before I think we're willing to look at increasing taxes, I think we need to look at justifying these incredibly high salaries. And the audit demonstrated that there were going to be $30,000 bonuses given. So before we're willing to invest more of our money, let's make sure that the money we've already invested is being spent wisely. You look at our focus on trains, and I think that that answers some of our questions, but it comes at the cost of the viability of our bus service. So I think we need to look at using what we have now more effectively before we try and increase our investment into this product.
Jenny, your 60 seconds.
Well, I think one of the most important acts that I was a part of was the implementation of the tax, which built the 4 rail lines. And it's expanded the rail. It's created a better method for people to move east to west, not just north to south. And the great thing about those lines being built is we have that line into perpetuity. The operational issues about going later, going on Sundays, doing a broader, those are important things to work through. But the fact of the matter is we have that space, and that's critical. So that's something I took some heat on, but we did have a bipartisan, multi-governmental consensus to get that done. An additional tax, I'm skeptical until we do a more thorough evaluation of where and how we can work with our existing resources. So I'm not going to say no into the future on that, but we do need a more thorough discussion.
Micah, your 30-second rebuttal.
Well, I think we're in agreement to a large extent. I think we need to be looking at how we can create a more viable alternative to using our vehicles. We talking about air quality. You talked about this issue prior to this hour. The only way that that's going to be something that's realistic is if we have a viable alternative to using vehicles, and I think that comes from using the resources we have in mass transit better now and not asking people to pay more.
A quick follow-up question. I've caught little maybe hints of this, but I'd like a pretty direct answer on this. If you could just magically, if all of a sudden there happened to be funds available and there was something that we could do, an expansion of the system in one way or the other, mass transit, what would your highest priority be? Jenny, maybe I could go with you first.
I'd like to expand the bus routes leading into the mass transit system, because I think that's where what we want to do is get somebody to work or where they're going almost as fast as if they took their car. And until that happens, we're not going to have the utilization we'd like, and we're going to fall back on our cars. I would, for air quality purposes and just congestion purposes, hope that we can go to one car per family someday in this valley. That's a goal.
Micah, your thoughts on that?
I agree with that. My office is in Sandy. I was going to a meeting in Holiday, and I looked at Google Maps to determine the best route to get there, and they offer different options. And so I looked at those. Driving would have taken me 15 minutes. Walking would have taken me an hour and a half, and mass transit would have taken me over 2 hours. So obviously, if we can increase bus efficiency and the frequency with which we can use the buses, we're going to have a system that doesn't make walking faster than our mass transit.
As you look at the long term for Salt Lake County, things that we can start doing now, planting seeds now, we already have unified police, unified fire. We've already talked about the different municipalities and the different governmental entities that are engaged in and over Salt Lake County. What is the future? Is there, in your opinion, the need to consolidate more? Is there the need to, in other parts of the country, it has become the county government is dominant. Is that something that we should be working for here along the Wasatch Front? And let's go with Jenny first on this.
Well, it's a catch-22. And when you consolidate, you have efficiency, but you also are one step removed, perhaps, or a little bit more removed from government. So I think the efficiencies are a good thing. The county's always provided those. It's a great service delivery entity. You see cities that want to go back and continue to contract with the county even when they've left the county to become cities, and that says a lot. So I think we can make either work. We currently have a hybrid throughout this area, and I think we do have good government. But what happens often is there are bugs in the system when you don't have that consolidation, including the drop calls that we're all concerned about, the sheriff's working on. We need to, priority going back is to find ways that we don't get drop calls through our call system. So, we can make it work either way, and there's a loss on either end. Generally, I think consolidation is a good thing.
And Micah, your thoughts?
Well, in general, I believe that the government closest to the people governs best. And so that's what we should be striving for, is getting the government as close to the people as possible. Now, obviously, where we have from one street to the next, you move from one city to the next, there needs to be cooperation. And I think that's going to be the key, and that's the role that the government should be playing, is cooperation and not necessarily consolidation.
All right. Jenny, any desire to respond?
Well, I think you'll see right now an interesting process going on as we look at the unincorporated areas within Salt Lake County, trying to decide how we can, as a county government, best serve them. Should we go wall-to-wall cities? Should we perhaps continue to operate an unincorporated area, which frankly is a very, very large area. It's only second to Salt Lake City in terms of its size. But there are some challenges with that system, and I do think coordination is important. That is a very, very key issue for us in the future, is our governance. It's something I know a lot about and want to hit the ground running on, along with Mayor Ben McAdams, if I'm able to go back.
Air quality has already been alluded to. Let's make this our final question, and then we'll go to your final statements. But air quality and industry has always been a concern. Just the folks who live here and heating our homes, traveling in our automobiles, the potential of Tier 3 gasoline. As you look at the future of the air quality, which Mayor Becker in Salt Lake City has said is a threat to the state of the city, what would you do to improve air quality immediately and long term? And Micah, let's start with you.
Well, there's no doubt that we have a problem. I mean, you step outside and you see the brown haze. It's either a cataract problem or we've got horrible air quality here in Salt Lake County. But certain things that we can do right now is ensure more rigorous enforcement of our emission standards. ensuring that the shops that are conducting the testing are not allowing people, friends and family. There's no friends and family discount or a slide through to get them stickers when their cars don't pass our emissions. So that's number one. Number two is going back to mass transit. We need to create a viable alternative to using our vehicles. If we're going to ask people to leave their vehicle behind, which will increase or improve our air quality, we need to have better and more alternatives in order to get them outside of their car. So that's some things that we can do now in the short term. Long term, Doug, you had mentioned Tier 3 gasoline, and there are certainly going to be new and better technologies that continue to come online. We need to keep an eye toward those and find out how we can best implement those without sacrificing the standard of living that we have now, but to make sure that that's part of our future.
Jenny, your thoughts on this?
I think everybody has to give on this one. I think we need to regulate more. I think we need, as consumers, need to make better choices. I think we need to think, can I get somewhere today without polluting, without getting in a car that is emitting pollutants? And until we all take some responsibility, and until our legislature and elected officials are willing to ask industry to do more, I think we're going to continue to have challenges. I worked to establish an air quality commission when I was on the county council, where the state would come with the county and we would look at this as a regional problem. A lot is being done, but it won't be enough. We have to all say, how much are we willing to do? Because it's not an easy solution. It's a solution that we all have to step up and be involved with.
If you have any other thoughts, Micah, and then we'll go to our closing statement.
No, I think we've covered it.
Okay, thank you for that. We can probably allow about 90 seconds each on this one, and because of the coin toss, Micah, we'll have you go first here with your closing comments.
All right, well, thank you, Doug and Jenny. This has been a great discussion this morning, and I appreciate the many issues we've been able to discuss. I wanted to make one thing absolutely clear, and that is that I believe that the chicken did, in fact, come first. But, I began my remarks this morning by speaking about the concept of balance and how it relates to government, and why I'm convinced it is so important that we resist the constant pull toward more and bigger government. But from my answers to Doug's questions this morning, I hope it has also been made clear that though I favor limited government, I do believe in government. This is especially true at the local level. I believe that this level of government and the government closest to the people is the one that is most accountable to the people, and the one that governs the best. Is the one that is easiest to maneuver and to turn around and speed up or stop. Because of this, it can be more flexible and bring innovation and responsive in serving the needs of its citizens. Interestingly, if we have a properly functioning local government, it can also help restore some of the balance that has been lost over the years as more and more power has been consolidated in Washington. This is true because if we properly protect our canyons, air, and water, there is less opportunity for some outsider to impose a more draconian solution upon us. So if this is the kind of thinking you would like on the county council, I'd appreciate your vote this November. Thank you.
Thank you, Micah. And your closing comments, Jenny?
Well, I believe Salt Lake County is a balanced government. It's a good government. It's a bipartisan government. And it provides essential services to us, from recreation, senior services, Meals on Wheels, planning, everything we've touched on today, including canyon management. These are important things. Our citizens do not want a limited county government. They want a well-run county government. And every day that I worked there for 6 years, I kept that in mind. I've been endorsed by the Salt Lake Tribune. They had a chance to interview us both, and I received that endorsement. And there was a relevant point in their editorial where they wrote, the Salt Lake County Council has a lot of work ahead. Making an experienced conciliator like Jenny Wilson one of its members will increase its chances of success. And I took my job very seriously. I want to return to this government. I am endorsed by both Republicans and Democrats because I believe that reaching across the aisle and finding solutions for our citizens is what's most important. And I ask you to return me to the Salt Lake County Council.
To both of you, thank you so much for joining us here at KSL today. We wish you well, and boy, everybody get out and vote.